So yeah, there's something else that I wanted to show, right? Like something I deal with a lot is the concept of cultural context. And so I agree with vocab and Abu that words and phrases are going to be the gold standard of establishing a language, etc. Right? Um, but I don't always have to look for the gold standard, right? That's not how scholarship works, right? And so for me, on a silver standard kind of a concept, I have no issue applying cultural context. So just like if I was to see like A.B.C apostrophe S on written down somewhere, that's not a phrase, that's not a word. But as someone who speaks English, I know that that means the alphabet. That's the ABC, right? In this context here, I don't know if you can see this or not, Abu.
Yeah, it looks like it's teaching how to use the letters, because it looks like I see like aleph with with the different diacritics under it, and then bet with different diacritics, like like a patach and the etc. And segol and so on. That's what it looks like. It's a little blurry on my phone, unfortunately, but yeah.
But these are obviously not words, right? This is more like this is almost
it looks like it's teaching someone the nikudot, the pointing to use to vocalize letters.
So would you say this is Hebrew or no?
Oh, I would definitely. Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it could be used for two different languages. It could be used for Hebrew or Aramaic or Arabic. But yeah, it's certainly Hebrew characters. Undoubtedly, Hebrew characters being used to teach the nikudot in that case.
Does the menorah on the right give any cultural context?
Yes, of course, and the 6-pointed star, and if I'm not mistaken, there might be an 8-pointed star next to the bet with the wa.
So whereas I agree with the argument, like there's like the words and phrases you're not going to see potentially for some of this stuff. But however, I do agree you potentially could see the script for some of this stuff, right? And I think that needs to be understood as a different argument and whatnot.
Agreed. Well, I'll say this. If people are going to go for that standard, it's certainly possible, right? Like, like I could put an X on a piece of paper and intend it to mean something specific. And, someone saying, well, I don't see coherent language in that doesn't disprove my intentions, right? So the only thing I would say is that skepticism remains justified, or at least understandable in those sort of contexts. But the other thing I would ask for people who go down that road, and this does not apply to you, but it does apply to people like Kelly and his crowd, that if you're going to have that sort of standard, I would say apply it consistently, because I think there is something very unfair where, like, for example, they'll say it's been proven that Aramaic is on the Pews, and they'll say, because we have an email from an anonymous scholar saying some of the markings look like Aramaic characters. And it's like, if that's the standard, then Arabic has been proved too, because it seems like everyone agrees. Anyone who's honest agrees there are markings that resemble Arabic characters, like individual characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, it seemed, the only thing I would ask is that if people are going to take this approach, that they'd apply it consistently. And I do think that crowd has not, something that I've said for a long time is that they unwittingly admit that the case for Arabic is stronger by virtue of the fact that they hold Arabic to a much stricter standard, than they do the other languages.
I wouldn't even say a stricter standard. I think they hold it to like a fantastical standard. Like, again, like
yeah, like for example, they're pleased with Yusuf Salhi saying, someone who's like fluent, a native speaker of Arabic wouldn't write it this way. And like, so that immediately begs the question, well, would a native speaker of Hebrew, someone who speaks Hebrew as their first language, write Israel with 5 alephs and 5 yods and a zayin and no aleph and no sin? It's like, the standards are so uneven, where it's almost like you need like perfect literacy for Arabic to be present. But for Hebrew and Aramaic and Ge'ez, it's like, just, a resemblance to a letter closes the door. It's like, it's done. We proved it.
Yeah, and so what do you do when there's 3 well-attested phrases, but then there's also these potential letters, right? This is what I'm saying. Like, you have to throw history out the window. Like, so like what you're talking about, like, so if Arabic wasn't their first language, would they write it like that? Well, okay. Was Arabic the first language of a lot of people in West Africa? No, even though it was the lingua franca, right? So, like, it's the fact that you see 3 well-attested phrases, right? One being a possible ayat from a surah, like a well-known one that you can also find in literature amongst the slaves in multiple examples, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, because it's part of the shorter suwar, it's amongst, like, that's the interesting thing. The phrases that are being proposed by these scholars, by Diakite, by Jafri Khan, they're all like phrases that would be at the beginning stages of like someone learning Islamic phraseology, right? Like, something like ilahi nas within the context of, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahi nas, right? Within that context, like ilahi nas is like one of the first like pieces of Quranic material that a child is going to learn. And Bubakar Diakite proposed la ilaha illallah. That's going to be like one of the first bits of Islamic phraseology that a child is going to learn. And so even a non-Muslim child at these like Quranic schools and stuff like that in West Africa. And so even if someone just learned a little bit of Arabic and then got removed from that environment and, was completely ignorant of the language beyond that, could still, some of the first things they would learn are precisely the things that are being proposed for these markings, like ilahi nas, like la ilaha illallah,
100%.
And that's a heck of a coincidence, right? Like, of all the things that would be proposed for the pews, it's like the phrases that would be the first things to be taught, Like Surat An-Nas is like among the very first things that like that children who learn Quran, they learn those shorter suwar at the back. They learn Surat Al-Ikhlas, they learn Surat An-Nas,
And again, even more important, the first time the Gullah Geechee language was found to be written down was in the Arabic script, but it was in use for writing the Gospel of John.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a huge one. And that's so relevant on so many levels. It's relevant on this concept of, where people want to treat Arabic as strictly the domain of Muslims. It's relevant to Benaya trying to say that there's no connection between Gullah and Arabic. You've already covered in detail his handling of Lorenzo Dow Turner's book. And, so to find out that the first piece, the oldest known piece of Gullah, written Gullah, is written in the Arabic script rather than the Latin script, that's huge,